The night was heavy and strange. Two pale moons were watching from the sky, spreading cold light over the dark forest. Shadows moved between the trees, and every sound seemed louder than it should be. In the middle of this lonely place, a young dragon was hiding. She was not like the great and powerful dragons from the old stories. She was still young, her body small, her scales glowing faintly in the dark. She had never felt so terrified in her life. Her heart was beating fast, and every breath was sharp, as if the air itself wanted to betray her. Her mother had been taken. Strange machines had come from the sky, landing like monsters with wings of fire. Men stepped out wearing dark suits and carrying weapons that hummed with energy. They were hunters, and they wanted her mother. The dragon had tried to fight, but she was too small, too weak. She could only watch as they trapped her mother in glowing chains and pulled her into a cage of steel. The sound of her mother's roar still echoed in her ears, a sound full of power but also pain. Now she was alone. The forest, once her safe home, felt like a prison. Strange red lights scanned the ground, moving slowly across the trees, searching for anything alive. She pressed her body against the roots of an old tree, forcing herself to stay still. Her tail trembled, her wings folded tightly against her back. If the machines found her, she would be taken too, and then no one would be left to save her mother. She wanted to cry, but dragons do not cry. Still, her eyes burned and her chest felt heavy. Every small noise made her flinch. A branch cracked far away. The humming of the hunter's machines grew louder, closer. She pressed her claws into the dirt, trying to calm herself. "Stay quiet," she whispered inside her mind. "Stay hidden." But her young heart could not stay calm. The image of her mother behind the steel cage was stabbing her again and again. She could not just hide forever. She had to do something. A beam of light swept across the forest floor, so close it almost touched her scales. She held her breath, not moving, not even blinking. The machine paused, and for a moment she thought it had seen her. A strange buzzing noise filled the air, and then the light moved away. Relief rushed through her, but it did not last. She knew they would not stop searching. They wanted her kind. They wanted the power of dragons, and they would not leave until they caught every last one. Her claws were shaking. Her wings twitched as if they wanted to carry her high into the sky, far away from this nightmare. But she knew she could not fly. The hunters had flying ships, and they would shoot her down. Escape was not enough. She needed to save her mother. Her mind raced, thinking of the old stories her mother used to tell her. Stories of dragons who could change their form, who could hide among humans when the world became too dangerous. She had never believed those stories. They were old legends, bedtime tales. But now, sitting in the shadows, heart beating like thunder, she began to wonder if they were true. The forest smelled of smoke and metal. The sound of boots crushed the earth as hunters moved closer. She could hear their voices, cold and sharp, speaking in a language she did not understand. She curled tighter, fear crawling over her like ice. She wanted to roar, to let the whole world know she was still here, but she knew it would bring death. Silence was her only shield. She closed her eyes, and in her fear she saw her mother's face. Strong, proud, but broken inside the steel cage. Her mother had always told her, "One day you will face a choice, and that choice will decide who you truly are." She had never understood what that meant. But now, with the hunters so close and the night so heavy, she began to understand. If she stayed as she was, a young dragon with weak wings and trembling claws, she would fail. If she wanted to save her mother, she had to become something else, something the hunters would not expect. Her breath shook as she whispered to herself, a sound no one else could hear. "I must change. I must become more." The thought terrified her. To give up her dragon form, the only thing she had ever known, was like giving up her soul. But she also knew she had no other choice. The sound of the machines grew louder again, the red light sweeping closer. She pressed her claws to her chest, feeling the small but fierce fire that lived inside her. It was the fire of dragons, the fire of her blood. Could she use it to change? Could she use it to hide? She did not know. But she had to try. Her body trembled, not only with fear now, but with decision. The moment had come. The hunters were almost upon her. She opened her glowing eyes one last time as a dragon, staring into the dark forest, into the cold light of the two moons. She felt the weight of the world pressing on her, but also the burning need to save the one she loved most. "I must become something else," she whispered again, her voice shaking but strong. "I must, or I will lose her forever." The forest grew silent for a heartbeat, as if it was listening. The machines hummed. The hunters marched, and the young dragon, terrified and alone, made the first step into a fate that would change everything. The forest was quiet, but her heart was not. It beat like a drum inside her chest, loud and restless, as if it wanted to escape her body. She stayed low to the ground, hiding behind the roots of the tree, and thought about what she had just whispered to herself. I must become something else. The words scared her, but they also gave her a strange kind of courage. She had never done anything like this before. She was still young, still learning what it meant to be a dragon, and now she was thinking about giving up her true shape. Her mother had once told her stories about dragons long ago. They were powerful, but they were also wise. When danger came and the world grew too cruel, they used a hidden gift, the power of change. They could turn into humans, walk among them, and no one would know the truth. But her mother had also warned her that the power could only be used once. Once a dragon chose to change, they could never go back fully. It was a choice that would last forever. She had never believed those stories were real. To her, they had been tales for young ones, something to make the nights less cold. But now, with hunters so close, with the sound of their boots pressing on the ground and their strange light searching through the trees, she wondered if the gift was inside her too. She pressed her claws to her chest and she felt her fire, small but strong, burning deep within. Was this the fire that could make the change? Was this the fire that could save her? She closed her eyes and tried to remember every word her mother had spoken. The body is only a shell. Her mother's voice seemed to echo in her memory. What matters is the spirit. The spirit can shape itself when the time demands it. The young dragon trembled, but she held on to that thought. She told herself this was the time. If she did nothing, she would be caught and her mother would remain locked away until it was too late. The humming of machines grew louder. She could feel the ground shake slightly as one of the hunters' ships moved closer. There was no more time to wait. She had to choose now. Fear filled her heart, but she pushed against it. She dug her claws into the dirt one last time, spread her small wings, and whispered, I am ready. At first, nothing happened. She felt foolish, desperate, almost broken. But then she felt a sudden fire inside her chest, spreading through her body. It was not like her normal fire, the one she used to breathe small sparks or keep herself warm. This fire was different. It was heavy, strong, and it pulled at her bones. She gasped, her body shaking, as the fire wrapped around her like a storm. Her scales began to glow brighter, then slowly melt into light. She cried out softly, her voice strange, caught between a roar and a scream. Her wings pulled tight, then folded into her back, vanishing as if they had never been there. Her claws stretched and twisted, her sharp talons turning into soft human fingers. She felt her tail shrink, her horns fade, her glowing eyes dim. The pain was sharp, but she did not stop. She clenched her teeth and pushed through it, telling herself this was the only way. She opened her eyes, and for the first time she saw the world not as a dragon, but as a human child. Her body was smaller, weaker, and strange. She touched her face and felt smooth skin where once she had hard scales. She looked at her hands, no longer claws but fingers. She wiggled them, confused but amazed. She took a breath, and even that felt different, lighter and shorter. For a moment she almost forgot her fear. She was shocked by the change, unable to believe she had truly done it. But then the sound of voices reminded her where she was. The hunters were still near, their machines still searching. She stumbled to her feet, unsteady in her new form, and hid again behind the tree. Her mind was spinning. She had always felt strong as a dragon, even if she was young and not yet full grown. But now she felt fragile, as if one push could break her. She looked down at her small human hands again and whispered, Is this really me now? Her voice was soft, high, and human. It frightened her, but it also gave her hope. If she could not see a dragon in herself anymore, maybe the hunters could not see one either. She heard the crunch of boots close by. 2 hunters walked past, carrying glowing weapons. They scanned the ground, their red lights shining on the tree where she was hiding. She pressed herself flat, holding her breath. One of the men stopped, shining the light closer. She froze, her heart racing. He tilted his head, looking around carefully. For a moment, she thought he would find her. But then he muttered something in his strange language and moved on. She let out her breath slowly, shaking all over. It had worked. She was no longer a dragon in their eyes. She was just a small human child, lost and harmless. For the first time that night, a small spark of hope warmed her chest. But deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. She had given up her wings, her claws, her dragon self. Now she would have to live in this fragile body, pretend to be one of them and use their blindness to her advantage. It was the only way to reach her mother. Her reflection appeared faintly in a pool of water nearby. She walked closer, knelt down and stared at the face looking back at her. Big eyes, soft skin, no horns, no glowing scales, just a frightened girl. She touched the water, watching the reflection ripple, and whispered, "I am no longer dragon, but human." The sound of marching grew louder again, pulling her back into fear. She stood up, brushed the dirt off her new form, and looked toward the lights of the hunters' camp. Her mother was somewhere inside, waiting, hurting, maybe losing hope. The girl clenched her fists. She could not fail. Not now. The forest was dangerous, the hunters cruel, and her new body weak. But she had made her choice. She would walk into the enemy's world, hidden in plain sight, and find a way to save her mother. And with that thought, she took her first step into the camp of the hunters, her human heart pounding but her dragon spirit burning bright inside. The night air was colder when she walked out of the forest, her small human feet pressing softly against the dirt. The hunters' camp was close now. She could see strange lights glowing ahead, blue and red, rising high into the sky like fire that never faded. Machines were moving around, humming like angry insects. The smell of smoke, metal, and oil filled the air. Every step she took made her feel weaker, but she forced herself to keep moving. Her mother was inside. She had no other choice. She stumbled as she reached the edge of the camp. 2 hunters stood guard, tall and dressed in heavy black suits. Their faces were hidden by masks, and their weapons glowed faintly, sharp and deadly. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure they could hear it. She wanted to run, but she made herself walk forward slowly like a lost child. Her legs shook, and she let them because it made her act look more real. One of the guards noticed her and raised his weapon. "Stop." His voice was hard, like iron. The red light on his weapon scanned over her from head to toe. She froze, her eyes wide with fear, and whispered, "Please, I'm lost." The words sounded weak in her human voice, broken and soft. The 2 guards looked at each other. She could not understand their language, but she knew they were confused. Finally, one of them lowered his weapon. He stepped closer, his heavy boots crushing the ground, and stared down at her. "Human child?" he muttered, as if not believing what he was seeing. She nodded quickly, pretending to tremble. "Yes, I'm alone. Please help me." Her small voice shook, and tears almost came to her eyes. She was not acting. It was true she was alone, true she was terrified. Only the reason was hidden. The guards hesitated, then one spoke into a strange device on his arm. A moment later, another man appeared, different from the guards. He wore no mask, only a dark coat, and his face was sharp and pale. His eyes were cold but curious. He bent down, looking at her closely. She tried not to flinch under his stare. "Where did you come from?" he asked. His voice was calm but dangerous, like a blade hidden under silk. She lowered her head. I don't know. I woke up in the forest. I was so scared. Please don't leave me out here." The man studied her for a long moment. She held her breath, praying he would believe her. At last he gave a short nod. "Bring her inside," he ordered the guards. Relief washed through her body, though she kept her face frightened and weak. The guards took her into the camp. She looked around as they walked, trying to memorize everything. The camp was large, filled with machines she had never seen before. Cages stood in rows, covered with thick bars and glowing locks. Inside them, strange creatures shifted, moaned, or cried softly. Some had wings, some had fur, some had scales. All of them were prisoners. Her chest tightened as she saw one of the cages farther away. Her mother was there. Even from a distance, she could see the large shape curled inside, chained and weak. The proud glow of her scales was dim and her head was low. The sight almost broke her. She wanted to scream, to run, to tear the cage apart, but she kept still, biting her lip until it hurt. She could not reveal herself now. The guards led her to a small tent near the center of the camp. Inside, a fire burned in a strange metal box, giving off both light and heat. The pale man followed and stood in front of her. He looked at her again, his eyes sharp, his mouth twisted into something that was not quite a smile. "You are lucky," he said. "This forest is full of monsters. A child alone would not survive long." She nodded quickly, her eyes wide. "Thank you. Thank you for saving me," he tilted his head. "But how did you get here? There are no villages near this place. No humans live here." His tone was suspicious, and his eyes searched her face for answers. Her throat went dry. She forced herself to look down at the ground. pretending to be too afraid to answer. I don't remember. I only remember running. Please don't send me back. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he gave a short laugh, though there was no kindness in it. Very well. You may stay for now, but if you lie to me— His eyes narrowed. I will know. She swallowed hard and nodded. I understand. The man turned to leave, but before he stepped out of the tent, he looked at her again. His gaze lingered longer than before, sharp and thoughtful. Strange, he murmured. Your eyes. They remind me of something. Then he walked away, leaving her trembling in the silence. She sat down on the ground, her small hands clenching tightly together. She could not stop shaking. He had almost seen through her. If he looked too closely, if anyone looked too closely, they would discover she was not human at all. But despite her fear, she felt a spark of hope. She was inside now. She had seen her mother, even if only from a distance. She had a chance to save her. She only had to stay hidden, stay clever, and wait for the right moment. Still, the memory of the man's cold eyes haunted her. When he said her eyes reminded him of something, she felt a chill deep inside her. Did he suspect the truth? Did he know that beneath her weak human skin a dragon spirit still burned? She lay down on the cold ground, curling her small body into a ball, pretending to sleep. But inside her mind she was awake, alert, and ready. The hunters thought she was only a lost child. They did not know she was the one who would tear their plans apart. As the camp grew quieter, the young girl lifted her head one last time and looked toward the cages. Her mother was still there, chained, waiting. A tear slid down her cheek. She whispered softly, I will not leave you. I promise. And in the silence of the camp, her promise hung heavy, as if the night itself had heard her words. The night inside the hunters' camp felt endless. Strange lights flickered above, casting long shadows across the cages. The young girl sat quietly near the fire, pretending to rest, but her eyes stayed open. She listened carefully to every sound, every word spoken by the hunters. She knew she could not fight them with claws or fire anymore. Now she had to use her mind, her courage, and her new human face. Her body still felt strange. Her small hands shook when she touched them, and her legs felt weak whenever she stood. But she forced herself to stay strong. She reminded herself why she had done this, why she had given up her wings and scales. Her mother was still chained, her glow fading more with each passing moment. If she did not act soon, her mother's fire would die. The hunters were careless sometimes. They thought she was just a child, helpless and afraid. They did not know she was watching them. They left her alone near the tent, giving her food and water, thinking she was too weak to be a danger. That was their mistake. She used every chance to listen, to observe, to learn. From the corner of her eye, she watched them work. She saw the leader, the pale man in the dark coat, speaking to the others. His voice was low but sharp, and the hunters obeyed him quickly. She could not understand all of their words, but she picked up pieces. They spoke about dragon blood, about how it could power their machines, about how it could make them strong. Each word struck her like a blade. They were planning to drain her mother, to use her fire for their own greed. Her small fists tightened until her nails dug into her skin. Rage burned inside her, but she forced herself to stay calm. If she showed anger, they would suspect her. If she attacked now, she would fail. She had to be patient. She had to plan. She watched the cages carefully. Each one had a lock that glowed with strange light, not like any normal key. But the leader carried something at his side, a small object, metallic and sharp. She saw him use it once to open a cage and drag another creature out. The object fit into the glowing lock, turning it off for only a moment. That must be the key. Without it, there was no way to free her mother. The thought made her stomach twist. How could she take the key? The man never let it out of his sight. He wore it on his belt, close to his hand, as if he knew its worth. One mistake, one wrong move, and she would be caught. But she also knew she could not waste time. Her mother's strength was slipping away. She decided to wait until the hunters grew tired. Slowly the camp grew quieter. Some men went into their tents, some fell asleep near the fire. Only a few guards kept walking, their eyes heavy with sleep. The leader entered his tent, leaving his coat hanging near the entrance. The metallic key glimmered faintly in the light. Her breath caught. This was her chance. She crawled carefully on her hands and knees, keeping low, keeping quiet. Each step felt like thunder in her ears, though no one stirred. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might give her away. She reached the tent's edge, her small fingers stretching toward the coat. For a moment, fear froze her. What if he woke up? What if the guards turned and saw her? But then she thought of her mother, chained and suffering, and the fear melted into determination. She pushed forward and slipped her hand into the coat's pocket. Her fingers touched cold metal. The key. She wrapped her hand around it, pulling it slowly, carefully so it would not make a sound. Sweat covered her forehead and her body shook, but at last the key slid free. She held it tightly in her hand, hiding it under her sleeve. She turned to move away, but a sudden voice cut the silence. "What are you doing here?" Her heart nearly stopped. One of the guards stood nearby, his eyes narrow, suspicion sharp in his gaze. She froze, clutching the key, praying he had not seen it. I was thirsty," she whispered quickly, pointing to the water jar near the tent. Her voice shook and she let tears fill her eyes. "Please, I didn't want to bother anyone." The guard stared at her for a long moment. Then he sighed and waved his hand. "Go back to your place. Don't wander, child. This camp is dangerous." She nodded quickly, lowering her head to hide the terror on her face. She walked back slowly, every step heavy, the key burning in her hand. Only when she reached the shadows near her spot did she dare to breathe again. She opened her hand slightly and looked at the object. It was small, simple, but it carried power. With this, she could free her mother. A spark of hope lit inside her chest. But she also knew the danger had doubled. If the leader discovered the key was missing, the entire camp would be thrown into chaos. They would search every corner and she would have no place to hide. She held the key close to her chest, whispering softly so only she could hear. "I have it, Mother. I will come for you." But as she spoke, a loud alarm suddenly broke the silence. A sharp, piercing sound filled the air and red lights flashed across the camp. The hunters woke quickly, grabbing their weapons, shouting to each other. The pale man stormed out of his tent, his eyes furious. His hand reached for his belt, and when he found it empty, his rage grew like fire. The girl's blood ran cold. They knew. They would search. She clutched the key tighter, hiding it, her body trembling. She had taken the first step. But now the danger was greater than ever. Her plan had begun, but it was no longer secret. The hunters were awake, their anger burning, and she was trapped among them with the stolen key. The alarm screamed through the camp, loud and sharp, like 1,000 angry voices. Red lights flashed everywhere, painting the cages and the tents in a bloody glow. The hunters shouted to each other, running in every direction with weapons ready. The girl's heart pounded so fast she thought it would break out of her chest. She pressed the stolen key tight against her palm, hiding it inside her sleeve, but she knew the danger had grown. The pale man would soon discover what was missing, and then every hunter would search until they found it. She crouched low in the shadows, watching the chaos around her. The hunters were busy checking the cages, checking their machines, their eyes sharp with suspicion. None of them looked at her yet. She was still only a lost child in their minds. But that could change at any moment. She had to move quickly before the truth reached them. Her eyes turned toward the far end of the camp. There in the largest cage lay her mother. The once proud dragon was curled on the ground, her chains glowing with cruel energy. Her scales no longer shone with bright light. They looked dim, as if her fire inside was fading. The sight made the girl's throat ache. She wanted to cry out, but she swallowed her pain and forced herself forward. She moved between tents, small and quiet, using the noise of the alarm to cover her steps. Her new human body was weak, but it was also light, easy to hide. She slipped past 2 hunters who were arguing in their strange language, their backs turned to her. Step by step, she reached the cage. Her mother's eyes opened slowly. They were tired, but when they fell on the girl, they widened with shock. For a moment, the dragon did not understand. She saw only a human child standing before her. But then she looked deeper into the eyes, and her heart knew. Her daughter. The girl pressed her hand against the bars, whispering, "Mother, it's me. I changed." A faint sound escaped her mother's throat, halfway between a roar and a sigh. "You gave up your wings on for me?" The words were weak but full of sorrow and love. Tears blurred the girl's vision. She nodded quickly. "I had to. I couldn't fight them as a dragon, but now I can save you." She pulled the key from her sleeve, showing it with trembling hands. Her mother's eyes glowed faintly, a spark of hope breaking through the pain. The girl pushed the key into the glowing lock. It hissed, sparks dancing as the light dimmed. Her hand shook so much she almost dropped it, but at last the lock clicked and fell open. The chains around her mother loosened, their glow fading away. For the first time since the capture, the dragon lifted her head, weak but free. But before they could rejoice, heavy footsteps thundered behind them. Shouts filled the air. The hunters had noticed. The girl spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. Dozens of guards rushed toward them, weapons raised. Their leader, the pale man, walked at the front. His face was twisted with fury, and his eyes blazed like cold fire. He pointed at the girl, his voice cutting through the alarm. "She's not a child, she's the dragon." The words struck like lightning. The guards froze for a moment, then growled in anger, aiming their weapons. The girl's breath caught. Her secret was broken. They knew. Her mother tried to rise, chains falling from her body, but she was still weak. Her wings trembled, her fire flickered low. The girl moved in front of her, spreading her small human arms wide as if they could shield a dragon. She felt tiny, fragile, foolish, but her spirit blazed. "You will not take her again," she shouted, her voice shaking but fierce. The hunters laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. To them she looked like nothing more than a weak little girl. But the leader did not laugh. His eyes stayed locked on her, sharp and cold. "I knew there was something strange about you," he said. "Those eyes. You cannot hide from me." The girl's body trembled, but she did not move aside. Her mother's weak breath warmed her back, giving her strength. She clenched her fists and glared at the hunters, forcing herself to stand tall. The guards closed in, surrounding them with glowing weapons. The red light from the alarm painted their faces, making them look like monsters. There was no way out, no place to run. The girl's heart sank, but she refused to give up. Her mother's voice whispered behind her, weak but steady. "Do not be afraid, my child. Fire lives in you, no matter your form. Use it." The girl swallowed hard, her hands trembling. She wanted to believe, but she felt only fear. Fear of failing. Fear of losing her mother forever. She looked at the hunters closing in, their weapons ready to strike. Her body shook, but her spirit whispered back, "I am still a dragon. I will not surrender." The leader raised his hand, signaling the attack. "Take them," he commanded. The hunters stepped forward, surrounding mother and daughter like wolves circling prey. Sparks lit the air as their weapons charged. The girl pressed her back against her mother's side, her small body ready to fight, though she had no claws, no wings, no fire. Her breath quickened, her heart roared, and she whispered, "If I must burn, then I will burn for you." The tension grew so heavy it was like the air itself would break. The hunters moved closer, weapons gleaming, eyes cold. The young girl clenched the key in her hand, her only weapon, her only proof of courage. And then the cage around them shook as the first guard lunged forward. The battle had begun. The night exploded with chaos. The alarm still screamed, red lights flashing across the camp, but now there was something louder, the clash of battle. The hunters rushed forward, weapons glowing, their faces filled with anger. The girl stood in front of her mother, her small human body shaking, but her eyes burned with courage. She had no claws, no wings, no dragon fire, but she had a heart that refused to break. The first hunter swung his weapon down toward her. She ducked at the last moment, the blade cutting through the air where her head had been. She stumbled but grabbed a rock from the ground and threw it with all her strength. It struck his mask, making him stumble back with a growl. She had no real weapon, but she could be clever. She could be fast. Behind her, her mother raised her head, weak but still alive. The dragon opened her mouth and let out a small burst of fire. It was not the great flame she once commanded, but it was enough to send two hunters stumbling back, their clothes smoking. The girl turned, hope flashing in her chest. Even weakened, her mother was still dangerous. Together they had a chance. The hunters shouted, surrounding them. More beams of light shot from their weapons, cutting into the dirt, leaving burning marks on the ground. The girl pulled her mother's chain and guided her toward the shadows of the cages. If they could reach cover, they might survive. But the leader blocked their path. His pale face glowed red under the alarm lights, his eyes sharp and merciless. "You cannot win," he said calmly, his voice like cold steel. "You are a child pretending to be strong, and your mother is dying. Surrender now, and I may let you live." The girl's chest heaved, but she did not step back. She glared at him, her voice loud though it trembled. "I will never surrender. I am dragon even if I look like this," the leader sneered, raising his weapon. But before he could strike, the girl kicked at the side of a machine nearby. Sparks flew and the machine hissed before exploding. The blast knocked two hunters to the ground and filled the air with smoke. She grabbed her mother's chain again and pulled her through the confusion. The battle grew wild. Hunters stumbled in the smoke, shouting, firing blindly. The girl darted between them, small and fast. leading her mother step by step. She grabbed anything she could, a stick, a loose metal rod, even broken parts of the hunter's machines, and used them to strike or block attacks. She was not strong, but she was clever. Every second she bought gave her mother time to breathe, time to gather strength. One guard caught her by the arm, pulling her back roughly. She cried out, but before he could drag her away, her mother roared. A weak but fierce blast of flame shot out, hitting him in the chest and throwing him backward. The girl fell to her knees, gasping, but quickly got up again. She would not stop. She could not stop. Step by step, mother and daughter fought their way through the camp. Each moment felt like the end, yet each time they survived. The girl's clothes were torn, her hands bruised and bleeding, but her spirit burned brighter than ever. Every time she looked at her mother, she found strength. She told herself, if I fall, she falls. If I fight, she fights with me. The hunters grew more furious. "Kill them!" the leader shouted. His voice carried above the battle, and his eyes locked on the girl with hatred. He pushed through the chaos, his weapon glowing brighter than the rest. He was not like the others. His strikes were faster, his strength greater. He aimed not just to capture, but to destroy. At last, he stood face to face with the girl. She held only the broken metal rod, her hands shaking. But she lifted it anyway, ready to defend. He swung his weapon, and she barely blocked it, the force throwing her to the ground. Pain shot through her body, but she forced herself up again. Her chest heaved, her vision blurred, but she stood. The leader's eyes narrowed. "You are no warrior," he said coldly. "You are nothing but a frightened child." The girl's voice cracked, but it carried strength. "I am my mother's daughter. That is enough." He lunged forward again, his weapon aimed straight at her. Time seemed to slow. She saw the glowing blade, her own reflection in its surface, and her mother struggling to rise behind her. Fear almost crushed her. But then something deeper broke free inside her. Her eyes burned with light, not human, not dragon, but something between. Her spirit surged, half hidden, half revealed. She raised her hands, and for a moment fire flickered in her palms. It was small, weak, but real. The leader's weapon struck, and the fire burst outward, colliding with the blade. The air exploded with sparks and smoke. Both of them were thrown back. The girl landed hard, gasping for breath, her hands burned but alive. The leader rose slowly, his face twisted in fury. His weapon was cracked but still deadly. He lifted it again, this time pointing it not at her but at her mother. The girl's eyes widened, horror filling her chest. She tried to run, but her body was heavy, her legs weak. The leader's weapon glowed brighter, ready to strike. Her mother lifted her head, too weak to move, her eyes filled with sorrow. She whispered softly, "No." And in that terrible moment, the girl screamed. Her voice carried through the camp, shaking the air itself. Her spirit burst again, stronger this time, light blazing in her eyes. Something inside her was changing, breaking free. She felt it like a storm waiting to explode. But the leader did not pause. His weapon aimed straight at her mother's heart. The girl's scream echoed louder, her fire burning brighter, and the camp held its breath for the strike that would decide everything. The scream tore through the camp like thunder, shaking the air, shaking the hearts of everyone who heard it. The young girl's body glowed, her eyes burning with light. Not human anymore and not fully dragon, but something caught in between. Her spirit had burst free, and it filled the night with power. The hunters froze, their weapons raised but their hands trembling. Even the pale leader paused, his weapon still pointed at her mother, but his eyes wide with sudden fear. The girl's chest heaved, fire flickering on her hands, fire that should not belong to a human body. She had tried so hard to hide her true self, but now the truth shone brighter than the red lights of the alarm. She was dragon, no matter what form she wore, and she would not let her mother die. The leader snarled and pushed forward, swinging his weapon down at her mother's heart. The girl leapt between them, her fire bursting from her palms. The blade struck against the light, and an explosion of sparks and flame lit the night sky. The ground shook, machines rattled, and hunters fell back, covering their faces from the blast. When the smoke cleared, the girl stood tall, her body glowing faintly, her eyes fierce. She was no longer only human, but not fully dragon either. Her skin was smooth, but carried a shimmer like scales. Her hands looked soft, yet flames curled from her fingers. Her voice, when she spoke, was both childlike and ancient. "I am not nothing," she said, staring at the leader. "I am my mother's fire. I am dragon." The hunters backed away, whispering in fear. The pale man's face twisted with rage. "You think a half-formed child can stop me? You are weak. You are broken." He charged again, his weapon glowing with deadly light. But the girl was no longer afraid. She moved with a strength she had never known, fire guiding her steps. She ducked under his swing, rolled across the dirt, and sent a blast of flame at his back. He staggered, his coat burning, but he did not fall. He turned quickly, striking again, and the two clashed in a storm of sparks and fire. Her mother, weak but free from chains, lifted her head and roared. It was not a full roar, not the earth-shaking sound of her old power, but it carried courage. It echoed across the camp, reminding her daughter that she was not alone. Together, even in weakness, they were strong. The hunters tried to join the fight, but their machines sparked and broke as the girl's fire spread. She moved fast, striking their weapons, turning their machines against them. Explosions lit the night one after another. The camp that had once been a prison became a battlefield of fire and smoke. At last, she stood face to face with the leader again. His weapon was cracked, his body burned, but his fury made him dangerous still. He raised his blade one last time, shouting in anger. She lifted her hands, fire swirling around her, and their powers collided. The blast was louder than thunder. The ground split. Cages shattered, and the hunters were thrown into the dirt. When the light faded, the leader lay broken, his weapon shattered to pieces. His cold eyes still glared, but his strength was gone. He tried to rise, but the girl stepped forward, fire glowing on her hands. "This ends now," she said firmly. Her voice did not tremble. "You will never touch her again." The man spat weakly, but his body fell back, defeated. The other hunters, seeing their leader fallen, dropped their weapons. Some fled into the forest. Others fell to their knees, too afraid to fight. The battle was over. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of burning machines. The girl turned quickly to her mother, rushing to her side. The great dragon lowered her head, her eyes filled with both pain and pride. "You saved me," her mother whispered, her voice soft but full of love. "You gave up your wings. For me." The girl's eyes filled with tears. She touched her mother's scales, feeling their warmth. "I would give everything," she said, her voice breaking, "because without you I am nothing." Her mother's breath trembled. "But you are not nothing. You are more than dragon, more than human. You are both. And you are strong." The girl lowered her head against her mother, tears falling freely now. For the first time, she allowed herself to cry, not out of fear, but out of relief. As the night calmed, the cages around them broke open, and the other creatures slipped free. They looked at the girl with wide, glowing eyes, whispering in their own voices. She had not only saved her mother, she had saved them all. The fires of the camp burned down slowly, painting the sky with orange light. The girl stood beside her mother, looking up at the twin moons above. She no longer had wings to carry her into the sky, no claws to fight like before, but she felt lighter than she ever had. Her mother looked at her with tired but proud eyes. "What will you do now, my child? You cannot go back to the dragon you were." The girl wiped her tears and stood tall. She looked at her hands, soft but still glowing faintly with fire. She looked at the moons, shining like watchful eyes, and then she smiled gently. "I may not have wings anymore," she whispered, her voice steady, "but I will always fly, because I still have you." Her mother's eyes softened and she leaned closer, wrapping her daughter in a warm, careful embrace. The hunters' camp lay in ruins, but the bond between mother and child had survived. Stronger than chains, stronger than fear, stronger even than fire. The night was no longer terrifying. It was bright with hope. And together, mother and daughter walked into the shadows of the forest, ready to face whatever the future held. Not as dragon and child, but as one heart burning with endless fire.